Hello everyone, today I'm going to be walking you through a lap of Oulton Park on Assetto Corsa Competizione. I'm going to be driving the McLaren 720 Evo for this. I got the traction control set to 2, the ABS set to 1, TC2 is at 0, and of course the engine map is at 1. Brake bias is set to 45% at the front in order to keep the rear behind the car where it belongs. If you move it too far to the back, even with ABS, it wants to overtake itself. I typically prefer a car that's oversteery on the brakes, but at Oulton, you're really trying to get every single ounce of grip that you can out of the car. The track surface is so bumpy and so rough, it's really hard to get the right amount of pressure and the right amount of temperature into the tires, and if you don't have that, you're just going to spin everywhere. It is really bumpy and extremely difficult to keep the car in a straight line. It takes a lot of practice. And even this demonstrational video, there are so many mistakes that I will be pointing out, but it's definitely very far from a perfect lap. There's about 1 or 2 seconds out there, even for me. And I'm far from the fastest guy around here, but Oulton has such a small window for mistakes. You really have to have it nailed down and have a pretty good idea of where to put the car every single lap, or else you will be going off the circuit. It is quite a short lap, and it is quite a tight lap as well. Many chicanes, but also there are some pretty fast flowing corners. It's really hard to link it all together, and a lot of GT3 cars are just geared all kinds of wrong for this kind of track. I'm bouncing off the rev limiter, having to downshift after just barely getting into a gear all over the lap. Of course, with different cars and different softwares, that will vary. In some games you can adjust the gearing. I do not believe that you can in ACC. The main point of this video is just to get kind of the idea across of where you should be on these laps. When we're coming up to the final straight of the high-speed lap, I like to include those so you get a good sense of speed. And now we're going to dive into the nitty-gritty of everything and really analyze this lap. So on the first corner, it's very hard to judge. Going through the corner isn't too difficult, but braking and finding a braking point for all of your laps is extremely difficult. I personally found the beginning of this arm co-berry to be a pretty good braking point. You can probably get away with braking just a little bit later, but it is so hard to find a braking point. Now, on this lap, I royally screwed up this corner. You can kind of see the darker rubbered in line. I just apex it a little bit too early. I even have to correct the steering. For turn 1, you want to follow that dark line exactly and just barely nick the inside curb. On the exit, you want to go as wide as possible, so make sure that your inside wheels, both of them, both front and rear, are on the track and not over the white line. But the outside curbing is smooth enough to the point that you do want to be that wide, and you definitely want to cut in before that grass starts to close in. On your first few learning laps, you're going to want to take this corner super easy. It's a downhill crest into a fast left-hander. You want to apex this corner right where the curbing turns to that gray color, and keep in mind that that right-hander is flat out. The next corner, of course, is a pretty heavy braking zone. You use this Pirelli board here. That's a pretty good brake marker, and then you drop the car down a gear. This is a pretty common place for cars to break loose, so be a little bit careful on the way in. You're going to want to apex pretty late, but you're also going to want to hold the inside line all the way through the corner. On this lap, I was just a tiny bit wide, but you definitely don't want to go onto that inside curb at all. The exit is the same story as turn 1. You want to use as much of the track as you can, but you also want to cut back in extremely early. Don't stay out there for too long. Usually on a corner like that, you want to exit and stay right along that white line, but it's extremely bumpy at the edges of the track here, so you want to go a little bit more towards the center. For the next corner, you barely shave off any kind of speed. There's 2 brake markers there. I usually use the curbing on the outside. You can also use a rubbered in part of the track, but you barely drop a gear. Some cars you don't even have to do that. The apex is about where the curbing ends, but you want to keep it tight through that entire corner so that you have a better entry to this next one. You want to brake super hard and shave off a lot of speed right when the track gets dark. The apex on this one is also pretty late, but you want to stay off the curbs pretty much through this entire sector, both on the apex and on the exit. Using the curbs on the outside if you have a little bit of oversteer isn't too bad, but it's best to just try and avoid it to the best of your ability. I found this cone on the outside of the track to be a really good brake marker, and you have to slow down a lot for this corner. You're going to want to apex the tip of the curb and avoid the raised bit, because if you hit that, you will become extremely unsettled. So you're going to want to apex the next one a little bit late and get as close as you can to that curb, but do not touch it at any cost. That is one of the bumpiest parts of the entire track. Stay away from these two curbs. They are extremely dangerous and they will ruin your race. Don't use the entire track coming out of that corner as well. It's a little bit bumpy on the outside, so stay a little bit closer to the center. Another hard braking zone, and I recommend looking at that brake board on the left hand side to judge where you want to slow down. Now I usually apex at the tip of that curb, but I don't usually touch it, but as long as you stay off the raised bit, you should be okay. Same story here, just hit the tip of that curb, but try and stay off it in order to keep the car stable. Keep to the inside as well. You want to carry a lot of speed, but on the inside, these curbs are terrible. They are easily the bumpiest part of the track, and if you so much as think about touching them, you will spin out no matter what traction control settings you have. Same story for the curbs on the outside, avoid. Now these last three corners, in my opinion, are the best on the entire track. It's a really fast, flat out section until you get to about right here. You're going to want to brake a decent amount at the rubber, but not too much because this is still a fast corner. For this example, I slowed down a little bit too much and went to the inside of that rubbered inline, which is not what you want. Apex 2 is on the curb, but not so much to where you're going on the raised bit. You definitely don't want to be there. And you can use the full track on the exit, just like turn 1 and turn 3. This corner is very deceptive and you want to get the car slowed down a lot more than you would think you would. You want to apex right when that gray bit sticks out from the curb, but you don't want to go onto the curb except for on the exit where you want to use the full track. And then you keep to the inside until you go over the line, and that is a complete lap of Oulton Park in the McLaren 720 Evo. If you have any comments or constructive criticism, feel free to leave them in the comments. Any ideas for how to communicate and teach better, those are greatly appreciated. And thank you for tuning in. I will see you next time.